Welcome to Marketing Rebels Breaking Business Barriers. You have joined us for a special series called Marketing Momentum for Mental Health. And we have Susan here today, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this topic matters to her, and why it should matter to you. Susan, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Shauna. It is so wonderful to be here, and I really salute you for hosting this series on mental health and marketing. I think it is an extremely important topic, and you're really showing a lot of leadership by bringing this out into the open, so thank you. I work as a book coach and an editor, and I have been very privileged to do that work in the world. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of interesting things cross my desk when I'm doing that. And I've been thinking a lot about this topic since you brought it up, specifically in the context of this series. And it seems to me there are really probably three main issues that where mental health affects our businesses and specifically our marketing, because books often fall into the category of marketing for a business. We often will write a book to support the business. It's a wonderful way to get your message out there, to support your credibility, to share your brilliance with the world. And when we are not in a full state of being 100% confident and comfortable with who we are and where we are in the world, then it's much harder to do that. And so I think there are really three main issues that come into that. One of them is visibility. And I can relate back to quite a few years ago before I became a published author. There was no way I was going to step into the limelight and become an author or even market a business. What really kick-started my journey was when my husband passed away 16 years ago now. And I had little kids, and I had a physically disabled mom in my life who needed a lot of support. I was very overwhelmed, very overburdened. I was traumatized by my husband's death. He was only 48 years old, father of 5 children, father and stepfather of 5 kids. So it was a big shock, required a huge realignment of my life. And I was really, really busy. And I held on for about 2 years before I finally had a massive breakdown. I just couldn't keep going any longer. I was not concentrating. I was yelling at my children all the time. I wasn't generating any business because, of course, after he had passed away, I had to make money. I had been home with my kids, with a fair number of children. There was a lot to do. And I ended up having to go back to work, starting my freelance writing business back again as a content marketer. And it was just way too much. And I didn't know how at the time to support my own mental health. I didn't know that it was a priority the way I do today. So that visibility piece, I was not able to step into the marketing of my business in a really powerful way just because I was so overburdened. And then we can talk about these a little later if you like. But the other two issues that I think are really important are learning about running a business and marketing your business. And we don't always have the bandwidth to invest in that when we're in that pulled back state that our mental health can sometimes take us to. And then finally, the other issue is bandwidth. Quite often when we're struggling emotionally, we just don't have the energy to do all of the things that we maybe know we need to do in order to support our business and get our message out. So that's kind of my opening thoughts on all of that. And again, so glad to be here.
Oh, I'm speechless, which is hard to do, because, oh my goodness, do I ever relate to that? That's such a difficult space to function in. And I know for a fact that our viewers are in the same space, joining in this conversation from a place of, oh God, I know that. It may not be the exact same. We may not have lost our spouse or looking after a mother who needs some very intense care. We may not have a multitude of children or business that is the only thing supporting your family. We may not have all that, but there's going to be elements there that we're sitting there going, oh, damn, that hits. So the visibility, which is a huge part of marketing, and remembering that I love the idea of you're never not marketing. So whether that's marketing yourself as a business owner, showing up for your business and doing what you need to do in order to generate clients and cash flow, or whether that's showing up for yourself in life marketing yourself to your children, being a leader and role model to the community and to just the people in your surroundings, that becomes increasingly more challenging when the idea of being seen, being visible, causes physical pain by consequence of your mental unrest.
Yeah, it's huge. One of my mentors and friends now, Jennifer Huff, taught me some years ago a little something that has been pivotal for me in keeping myself grounded and well emotionally for the most part, is be a relentless champion of your vibration. And what that means to me is just as we're never not marketing, we are never not investing in our mental health, either for better or worse. We're never not attending to our mental health. If we're overwhelmed and we're doing too much and we're looking after the whole world in as many ways as we can and trying to run a business and trying to be a good partner or whatever it is for you, we are depleting ourselves. And unless we're investing in ourselves and our emotional well being, we can't possibly do everything that we have to do for other people, let alone for ourselves. And so I have become a relentless champion of my vibration, which means things like I don't watch news, TV news. I know it's not news. I know what's going to be on the news. There's going to be a shooting. There's going to be a kill, a car accident. There's going to be um, somebody's going to have beaten their partner. I mean, there's going to be bank robbers. There's going to be
Some sort of
politicians.
war or
Oh,
civil
yeah.
dispute, or yeah, absolutely,
It,
absolutely. There,
it
it's
doesn't
all
change.
negative.
But it doesn't change. It's not new. It's all the same old stuff. So I will review my headlines and my news apps periodically, just in case there is something I need to know about. But I don't put that on myself. It's not new, so I don't expose myself to that kind of negative vibration and negative people. We
Right.
all have them in our life. I don't really anymore because I have cleaned house on that one. I don't go spend my time with people who bring my vibration down, who make me feel bad about life and about themselves. So there's a lot you can do to actually invest in your mental health.
And that's powerful. That is a very powerful thing to be able to do, to have that kind of control. And that can just simply that can change the composition of your neurology, truly, the way you're thinking, the way you're responding, and that impacts everything. And I
Yeah,
think, interestingly, based on your three topics that you brought forth today, it leads very generously into the idea of learning, because the easiest way for you to learn is to be in a space of openness and growth, to be playful and positive. And so
exactly.
where are we going there in the learning space, just from your opinion?
Well, if we, when I'm thinking specifically about marketing, and when we're an entrepreneur, we are always marketing. As you point out, we're never not marketing. And yet I find that most people find marketing a real black box. Like, what is marketing? How do you do marketing? And it's almost overwhelming. When you don't know what to do and your brain doesn't have that finely developed network about doing your marketing, you're taxed. We're taxed to learn how to market, and it can cost money. To be quite honest, when
Yeah.
I was a widowed mom with two little kids, we only had two that were little by the time my husband passed away. I just didn't have the bandwidth to be investing in learning how to do marketing. I'd been home with my kids for 9 or 10 years, and it was a busy 9 or 10 years. But when my husband passed away, I had to start that business up again, as I mentioned. This little thing called the internet had come along while I had been home with my children. And
Right.
while I'd been a freelance copywriter for years before taking that time off. The game had changed dramatically by the time I got back to work. And I was dumbfounded by how much I didn't know about applying what I already knew to this new environment of the internet. So I ended up learning, 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 learning. Unfortunately, there are a lot of free resources available, but it really, again, I didn't know at the time how to look after myself, but I was burning the midnight candle on figuring out what I needed to know. And I didn't have the money to invest in one-on-one training for what I needed to learn. And so that made it, probably a little bit harder. I think mentors give us shortcuts that trying to figure it out on our own can't provide us with.
Mhm.
But so in terms of then our emotional health and our mental health and wellness, when you have a lot you need to learn, and you kind of feel a little intimidated by what you don't know, that can have a take a toll on our mental health as well. So that learning is an important learning curve. It's important to find out what it is you need to know. Maybe your field might not be marketing. That may not be where your gap is, but it's so important to catch up, and yet it's hard to do. So
Yeah.
that is something to keep an eye on as well.
And what I'm hearing though is that the learning part, because you separated these two, the learning part and the bandwidth part, your energy,
Yeah.
those two things, despite the fact that you separated at the beginning, we're seeing that they're actually quite integrated. We're seeing that there's a huge flow between the two. And interestingly, when you're aspiring to grow a business or to reach some sort of personal or professional milestone, it's going to cost you either money for the support to speed, to fast track the process, to get the external support that you need, or time and energy. That's your bandwidth.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're really stuck in that place, and that just compounds your overwhelm.
Yes. It sure does. And going back to making investments in your emotional and mental health every day, which is something I didn't know for years and years and years, and lived with a lot of anxiety. I didn't identify it as a mental health issue, but I think anxiety is a mental health issue. But I didn't even know I was
Absolutely.
struggling with anxiety. Like, that's how suppressed I think I was at the
Right.
time. So yeah, and I didn't know to look after myself. And wow, I look back on those years now, and I recognized how shattered I was, really, and doing my best, which I'm sure everybody wants to do their best. But now I know to take care of me.
Mhm.
And, I've got lots of strategies for doing that now. And I just would love to put out a call to action to everyone listening to look after yourself. There are people that are depending on you, and you are depending on you. And it's really important that you're at your best, so that you're showing up as your best in the world for yourself and whoever else might be in your world that you need to do that for. We
Absolutely.
can't give forever. We can't give and give and give and give and give and give, because then the tank runs out and we go splat. So
And that's something that's, I mean, I love the notion of that, and I encourage everyone who has that level of awareness to tap into it and to recognize, wow, shoot, yeah, it's time for me to take a minute to just say. And actually, it's funny enough, I'm some people will know this reference and some people won't, but there's a really great children's show called Bluey, and in that show there's an episode where mom just needs 20 minutes and dad has to make sure she gets her 20 minutes. So if you're in that space where you're like, I just need 20 minutes, take the 20 minutes. Take the 20 minutes, even if you don't have a
yeah,
partner or a support network who can take care of the kids.
yeah,
Listen, it doesn't matter if they're in front of the screen for 20 minutes. Okay, let them.
yeah,
That's great. Do it. Do the thing. Set them up with something. Take a step back. It's all right. Don't worry about it. You deserve it. The world deserves it because you have impactful things to offer, and you can't do so if you haven't taken the 20 minutes, proverbially. Now, that said, that's coming from a place of awareness, Susan.
yeah.
You said, and I wrote this down because I went, oh my gosh, how many people know this sentiment? I didn't know how shattered I was.
Mm.
If you don't know and you're just functioning in that space where you're just doing the next right thing, again, kids shows, I'm thinking of Anna in Frozen 2, do the next right thing when everything crumbles to nothing and you're like, I just have to take care of the kids, and I just have to take care of my house, and I just have to earn all the money, and I just have to and it gets to be where you don't even know what you look like, let alone where your level of tolerance is energetically. How do you
Yeah.
find your way out of that maze?
I was so lucky that, as I said, it took me about 2 years to fall apart. And I was not in a good place. I didn't know how shattered I was. And fortunately, I was in a women's networking, kind of a mastermind group that a women's networking organization had put together. And one of the ladies in that group as I was sharing how I was feeling one day, just looked at me and she said, "I think you need therapy." And at first I was really insulted because
Mhm.
I grew up in a family where only crazy people get therapy. And that had become my belief system. Like, what are you talking about? I don't need therapy. And she said, you know what? My husband died too. And I ended up going to a wonderful grief therapist, and she helped put me back on the rails. And after I got over my shock about needing therapy, I thought about what she said. I took her recommendation for this lady that she had gone to, and I got myself into therapy. And that to me, Shauna, that was a big step in overcoming a belief system that I'd grown up with, that only crazy people need therapy, that actually I now believe that the sanest among us are the people who are getting therapy, the most grounded people. I mean, sane is not the right word, but that I can't say enough about how much that helped me. I went for about a year, I think, to Melissa. Her name was, she's passed away since then, but she was an angel on earth and made such a difference in my ability to function, let alone function effectively. So I was very lucky. And maybe there are people out there who don't have that individual in their life who recognizes the signs of not coping well and not managing. But if you don't have that person in your life, then maybe you can be that person for yourself.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. And one thing that we're trying to do in this conversation series is to open the door to those conversations that need to be had, and understanding that the people who are here, at least the people who are on the panel, but probably the people who are companions in our audience, people, your peers, we are all here for a reason, and we can be here for one another. And the person in your mastermind was there for you, even if
yeah,
at the forefront you were like, oh my goodness, we were there for you. And
mhm,
and and I want everyone to know that that's what we're here for as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Now I
And
wanted
and
to
I
go
think
back. Go
can
ahead.
I just jump in with
Always,
one little thing
Susan,
quickly?
always.
So I think where that takes us back to is this question of stigmatizing mental health issues, that
Yes.
we've got to get beyond that. It is not, there is nothing wrong with needing help and getting help. That is the strongest thing you can do for humanity. Is if you need a little assistance to get through, get that assistance. There's no shame in it. I'm not ashamed of having needed therapy. I would get it today if I felt it. Now, since then, I've had a mountain of coaching. I'm always getting coaching, and that's helping me be grounded and healthy in my outlook. But please don't stigmatize anyone who needs a little assistance to get through. There is nothing wrong with being strong about your vibration.
You're a mind reader, because that's exactly where I was going. I had written here therapy, stigma, because this is huge. And this is kind of something that I've been here for. And I haven't really been able to figure out how to um, turn this into a single idea of a core value. But I want to present it here as just this idea that I am the kind of person who's against stigma, taboo, and and I'll tell you why. It's because I believe in the humanity of people. I believe in the fact that we are not perfect. We're not meant to be. Perfection doesn't exist. And so the idea of talking about something that might be hard, it's only hard because we've made it hard through stigma, taboo, stereotypes, things like that. Wash away all of that perception and get to the real and raw roots of it. And we're just humans. We're just humans who experience very real things, and everyone's experience is valid. And we need to learn how to do that by leading with kindness, which is one of my core values. So from there, I wanted to tell a story very briefly about your idea of asking for help.
Okay.
And it comes from, I mean, as a person who's in marketing, I do a lot of market research within social media. And there was a reel that came up that had beautiful pictures and somebody speaking. And when they spoke, they told the story of how when we are born into this world, the thing we do we're the best at, is asking for help. What does a baby do? They cry. They're asking for help. And then how is it that culturally we train that out of ourselves? That goes against our nature. We are naturally supposed to ask for help. So let's keep doing that. Let's touch base with that. You're not a big man for not asking for help, for shoving it down. And and again, I'm Susan, you're tapping into the kids movies in me. My husband loves the story Zootopia, and there's a fox in there, and he says, I was just really not happy with myself, and it came out as unchecked rage. I was a real jerk. And that's what happens when you don't ask for help. So I think
Well,
that's a really
I
important part.
love that. Oh, and that's another realization I've had in the last 5 years or so too, is that actually getting help is the best thing that you can do for your business.
Yes.
Asking for help in your business, aside from therapy or coaching or whatever, but we can't do it alone. For many, many years, I thought it was all up to me. Everything was all up to me. If my kids were going to be successful, it was all up to me. If my mother was going to survive, it was all up to me. If my business was going to be successful, it was all up to me.
It feels
And
heavy.
oh, it was so heavy. And I was the lone warrior, just very proud of it, of how strong I was and how much I could carry on these little shoulders.
Classic
And
woman
oh,
warrior.
I think a lot of us do struggle with that. And now I recognize, holy cow, the more help I can get, the happier I'm going to be. So ship that in. I get so much help now. I ask for help. Then initially it was very unfamiliar to ask for help, but now again, I think there's a stigma around asking for help too, now that I think about it. People don't
Exactly.
think if they ask for help, it means they're not good enough somehow. But I think
You're
those
right.
of us who, yep, if we ask for help, we're actually creating something bigger and stronger and better in the world, because no one of us is as strong as all of us.
That's it. And my grandmother will be the first person to say this. I have at the time of this recording, my grandmother's 87 years old, and I remember her telling me the story about how, her, I'm gonna say it's her sister said, "No, I'm not gonna ask them to carry my stuff out, or I'm not gonna call the bag boy or whatever." And my grandma says, "I'm gonna use my white hair. I'm gonna ask them for help, and I'm gonna get them to do this thing." And she's saying, "Oh, my sister was so, oh, I can't believe it." And my grandma says, "They enjoy it. People want to help. Don't tell me you don't want to help. If an old person comes up to you and they're struggling with their case of water or whatever the heck they're buying, and they go, 'Oh, excuse me, could you help me?' Are you going, 'Oh, I can't believe it?' Or are you going, 'Oh, of course,' and you feel compelled, and at the end you go, 'I just helped someone,' and you give yourself a little pat on your back. I feel good
Yeah,
about myself, because you do. It feeds itself. It's amazing the way that works. So whenever you're thinking, and this is just my little trick that I like to, I tell myself my grandma's story. If I think, oh, I can't ask for help, I'm going to put them out. That's usually a thing, right? Oh, I'm going to put someone out. They want to help. And if
yeah.
for some reason they're the kind of person who would turn their nose up to helping you, you just learned the lesson from the beginning that you described, Susan. That's not a person you want in your world, because they are going to lower your vibration.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to shift directions a little bit on you, Susan, because something that intrigues me about what you do as a profession and who you are as a person, because you're a natural storyteller and you're really great at tapping into people and their stories, which is really cool. And you're an editor. So you work with a lot of different people, um, angles of stories, experiences, that sort of thing. And I'd like to hear, and this is going to be a broad question, so take it whichever way you want. I'd like to hear a little bit more about your experience navigating the stories of other people as you're editing. And of course, you don't need to tell me specifics, because their stories are their own, but just, I know from our experience together that some of these stories were pretty intense. Some of them involved experiences that absolutely wrecked the mental health of the author. And then you need to then support them in telling that story. How do you function in that space? That can be very complex.
Oh, it is. And I think what really makes it easy for me in a way is that this is what I'm here to do. This is my purpose on the planet, is to help people tell their stories in a way that support other people. And so, the people that I work with specifically have had pretty traumatic things happen to them, as you've said. Usually that shows up in their published books. So I'm not spilling any secrets by saying that I've worked with people who have been sexually abused, as children, particularly people who have had major addiction issues, often as a result of sexual abuse, who have been neglected, who have been beaten, who have been abused by a partner, who have been physically threatened by a partner, who,
There's
you name
correct me if I'm
in
wrong, some people have been incarcerated wrongly
oh
for long
yeah,
durations of
oh,
time.
absolutely. Yes, yes. So, and these are difficult experiences. Now, the one thing that's very helpful for the world, I think, is that it's the people that I work with anyway are writing from a healed wound, not an open wound, in that they have taken those experiences, they've done their work. Quite often that it does involve a lot of therapy and coaching, and they have evolved their sense of what that was about, whatever that experience was.
Mhm.
And so they're writing from a place of wholeness, not a place of still trapped in the trauma. And so their perspective on what has happened to them is a healthy perspective. It's a supportive perspective. And so they're not trapped in the emotion of it themselves, which makes it a lot easier for me. And it makes it a lot easier for the reader. When we're still trapped in the trauma, we have less to offer our reader than when we are writing from the perspective of a healed wound, as they call it in the trade. So that's one thing that's very helpful, is that the people that I work with are in a good place around it, and they look after their vibration too. Also, though, this is what I'm here to do, is to bring important messages to humanity to help people feel better about their lives in whatever way that may be for them. And so it's taking those messages, and I'm helping my clients get that out, get the news out, that we don't have to struggle, we don't have to be miserable, we don't have to hate our lives, we don't have to hate our jobs or our partners or whatever it is. There are solutions available. There are a surprising number of solutions available for people who want to feel better about their lives. And my clients are the people who have those available. And certainly I've benefited enormously from serving the clientele that I serve. I'm always getting new tools for my tool chest in terms of my mental health and supporting me, but I also get to feel so good about helping to make that available to other people too. So it's really sacred work for me, and I'm just so lucky that I get to do this.
I love that so much. And you mentioned your toolbox for your own kind of healing and your own mental health and your own expression. And I think this is a really important transition here, is just on the topic of creating from healed wounds. I've heard this before. I've heard something about don't create from a bleeding wound, create from scars. Something,
Oh,
so the same
yeah,
idea,
I've
same
heard
idea.
that one too. Yeah.
And I think that's really profound when it comes to your toolbox and your own healing. You've written like 6 books? 6?
I'm working on number 6 now. Yeah.
I was going to say 6 books.
Yeah.
I know tidbits of your story, your creation story, becoming an author, showing up as your whole self, going through some of those healing journeys. But could you maybe shed a little bit more light into, of course, that first book, which we know is always that mountain that you need to climb. And then, of course, the consecutive books that come along that you're then able to embody the thing that you help others to do. And that is to share some healing messages and to really get the word out. I know that's a big ask, but maybe
Yeah.
let's see what we can do about this story, because I think there's something there for our ambitious viewers who want to get their word out there and are maybe not sure how to get past those bleeding wounds to the point where they
Oh,
can start expressing themselves.
thank you for that question. Every author loves to talk about their books. So, so I love that I'm led into this one. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm a career writer. So as soon as I finished university, I went into journalism. I worked in government communications and corporate communications and marketing, and you name it. I made a living as a writer. And the dream had always been to write a book. And that was what was in my heart to do. And so much as it was great to make a living as a writer, I wasn't an author yet. And so that was the dream. And then one day my husband looked at me, and my second husband, and said, you've always wanted to write a book, right? said, "Ah, do I ever want to write a book? I so want to write a book." And he just looked at me again and he just said, "Well, what's stopping you?" As
Mm,
only a partner can do. Like, how hard is this anyway?
mind blown. It's that question. Oh, it's
Isn't
sorry,
that
but
a
that
great one?
question, it's such a oh, I don't even know how to describe that question because it's one of those things where you get called out on your own BS. And it
That's exactly
sucks
what it
because
was.
you're like, "Oh, I hate to
You
love you
got
right
me.
now." That's beautiful. That's beautiful. What
Yeah,
stopped
it
you?
was. I mean, aren't I lucky to have had that person in my life, right? Like it was just, and so I that happened about the same time as I was pregnant with the family's fourth child, and
Mm.
and me being me and being a very experienced writer, and how hard can writing a book be? And I thought, okay, well, 9 months, that's plenty of time to write a book and make a baby. They'll both be done at the same time, and
I feel like you're
away we
talking
go.
about putting something in the oven. It's okay, set the timer. We'll be good. It'll bake.
Exactly how I felt at the time. And
Oh, dear.
13 years later, I was finished that book.
Oh
So
my
that
god.
really taught me about mindset and how hard it actually is to write a book. It is one of the most vulnerable things you can possibly do with your life is to write a book. All of your stuff comes up. At least it did with me. And yeah, who am I to write a book? And who's going to read this book? And oh, life was really busy. I had that next baby, and then there was one after that, and we moved a lot, and I had lots of reasons not to write my book until my husband died. And he had terminal cancer. He was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer, and in less than 3 months, he was gone. And as we mentioned earlier, that was an incredibly difficult passage in my life. It was scary. It was really scary, and I wasn't equipped to look after myself and my kids at the time, or didn't think I was. As it turned out, I was. But one of the silver linings, I guess you'd say, of that is that I recognize that the clock is ticking, and I didn't know when I was going to die. I had a lot of worry that I was going to die before my kids were old enough to look after themselves. And so I thought, well, not only that, that what if I die before I know if I can become a published author? Like, this really matters to me. And so I redoubled my efforts then. I don't know how I did it, but I finished the book. I hired two editors, worked on that book, and ended up with a traditional publishing contract. So it made the grade for whatever that is in traditional publishing, and ended up writing that first book. So it was a labor of love. But here's the cool thing: once you've done it once, you can do it. And I think that's part of why that first book is so hard for so many people. It's an act of courage, in my opinion. And we have no evidence that we can do this. None. Not. I was a very experienced writer when I sat down to write that first book, and I didn't know if I could do it or not. Like anyway, I think we probably all can. We might need Some of us might need more help along the way than others, but I think from my perspective now, I think it is definitely possible for anybody who seriously wants to do it to actually write a book. But I had proven to myself that I could with that first book. And being traditionally published, that's one of the advantages of the arrangement, is that the publisher will kind of take you under their wing a little bit. And so that first book was a novel, and it was about a woman's experience of an abusive relationship and how she got there and how she got out of it. And then my publisher came to me just the next year and said, because I thought when I got that book published, done. I've done it.
Wipe your
I've
hands clean.
achieved. I know I'm an author. Awesome. It felt so good. Never thinking there would be another one, right? Like
Mm.
thinking, okay, I've checked that box. Maybe someday I'll write another one. But my publisher came out and said, no, no, no. Have you got any short stories? Have you written any short stories? And as a matter of fact, I had. And so that was the second book. Was he wanted to bring out a collection of my short stories. And again, wow, that is so exciting. And because I knew I could do it, I had a lot more confidence in writing the second book. And then the next a year or two later, the publisher said, "You've been writing for a long time." And I said, "Yeah, however many years it was a long time. And he said, well, why don't you write a book about how to write powerfully? And in fact, that was what I wanted my first book to be. Like, it's sort of, I'd thought about that already. So that was the third book. And then the fourth book was a book about content marketing, which was the crux of my business for a long time. And then the fifth book, one of my clients came to me and wanted to co-author a book with me, and it was another relationship marketing book. So those are the five, and it was just, okay, now I'm working on number six, and I can't see ever stopping. Like, it's
Just a part
once
of
you've
your
done it
day
once.
to day.
Well, and it is and it isn't. Like, it's still, I have a really busy client base. I have a busy business. We do a lot of events. Um, my kids are grown up now. They're all fine. They grew up. They're amazing human beings. I'm
Doesn't
very
surprise me with
privileged.
this kind of mom. I'm just
Yep.
saying.
Well, it, in spite of this kind of mom, maybe sometimes.
No.
But now I have a little more time to do what I want to
Yeah.
do, in bigger chunks, like writing another books. But I fit it into a real. The other ones have all come along at a really busy phase of my life. So if I could do that, I'm sure anybody out there can find the time. We don't find the time, actually. We create the time to work on a book.
Yes. That's
Got to be
actually a really great way to just like create the punchline. You make the time to work on your mental health, to write your book, to create space for a positive resonance in your world, whatever that looks like. You create that time, and you have the capacity to control the things that are around you. Now there are so many places where we could take this. So I'm just going to give a couple of points, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to share some final thoughts, either about those points or just in summary, completely up to you. But some of the notes that I want people to kind of reflect on is the amount of vulnerability that it requires to write a book. That sentiment is so powerful and so true, and that can be kind of the process by which you come to heal wounds that you thought were already healed, and that can be very challenging. So vulnerability is a really big concept that I think we can explore from a mental health perspective. And then the idea of confidence, the idea of like the first time you do something is always going to be hard, but it's important that you push through, persevere to the point where you get it done to some capacity, because that's going to reinforce your knowledge of, I could do that. I did it already. I can do it again. And that includes overcoming situational obstacles, internal dilemmas, mental health struggles. When you get into those throes of, oh my gosh, this is too much for me to handle, push through, because there will be a next time. Listen, we're not going to sugarcoat this journey. Life comes with ups and downs, but when the next time comes, you've already done it once. You can do it again. And that's beautiful. So this idea of vulnerability and confidence, they go hand in hand in a lot of really unique ways. And so I'm going to invite you, Susan, to share some final thoughts. And then, of course, tell people where they can get in touch with you, because after this chat, I'm 100% sure you're going to have a lineup.
I would be honored to work with anybody who feels that I can assist them with their book. Yeah, vulnerability, biggest word in my vocabulary as a book coach and an editor. I've been there. I get it. I was so surprised at how vulnerable I was in writing that book. And I think that's the other thing. My clients are confident people. They're successful people. You don't start writing a book unless you feel you have something to offer through the book. So those are the people that I work with. And still, it puts them in a position of feeling very, very, very vulnerable. And on the topic of mental health, actually, quite a few of my clients will write their book while they're seeing a therapist, because it does bring up a lot of issues that you thought maybe were resolved, and maybe they're not quite finished. You're not quite finished with them yet. And so that is actually good to have a therapist in your corner, or a coach. That's the other thing. A lot of my clients have a life coach who's part of their team while they're writing a book, because it is a vulnerable thing. Things come up. Even though you've done your work and you're feeling strong about the story that you have to tell, there are often little pieces of it that you've forgotten about, or that kind of stray into your conscious mind, that make you stop and kind of think twice about a few things that are going on in your life and in your book. So, you can have a team while you're writing a book too, but it is a very vulnerable thing. And what I invite people to consider is that much as you might feel very vulnerable about writing a book, just imagine the people that you're here to serve with that book. They don't have the resources that you have. And that's why you're writing this book, because it's a resource. You're creating a resource for the people you're here to serve. And much as you might feel vulnerable about that, they're probably feeling 10 times more vulnerable because they don't have the resources that you have available to them. And so that's part of why we like to write a book, is to create an act of service in the world, in a world, by the way, that really needs some support. We live in a very, very challenging world. There are a lot of reasons for people to feel pretty unhappy. There are a lot of reasons to feel not unhappy too, to feel happy. But I think the people who a lot of my clients are here to serve, and me myself, are the people that would really like to make a contribution. Like we want a better world, and those books can make a huge difference. We've all got at least one book in our history that changed our life. And what if your book could be that one? And if you don't find the courage to walk through that journey, then the people that you're here to serve will not have that resource available to them. So, and not that you have an obligation to do it, but you do have a huge opportunity to help other people with those books. So, vulnerability and confidence are kind of flip sides of the same coin, really. But
Perfect. I
yeah.
love that. I
So,
love that. Now, with that, I want to make sure. Now, Susan, we are running out of time, but I need to tell everybody to go to crossmancommunications.com to reach out to Susan, because she's amazing, as you can tell. Like, honestly, I don't need to say it, but I really don't know why I even bother saying it, because it's highlighted in neon after this conversation. So thank you so much, Susan, for being on this show, for having this conversation, and for continuing this conversation beyond here, this series, Marketing Momentum for Mental Health. With that, I invite everyone else to make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, follow, because there are more conversations just like this coming to your door. Join in. That's what we're here for. I hope you have a great rest of the day. Chat soon.